Hello, this is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here to talk to you about one of Sibelius's most original and fascinating masterpieces, the tone poem Luonnotar, which is probably close to how you pronounce it in Finnish, but since I'm not, I'm just going to call it Luonnotar because it's easier. And I am going to mangle the living crap out of the Finnish language during this talk, so get ready. I know most of you aren't Finnish speakers, and I apologize to any of you who are, but I'm going to do my best to try and make sense of this thing. I think that part of the problem with coming to grips with this piece, of course, is the fact that the text is in Finnish. It's a creation myth from the Kalevala, and it's a strange creation myth on top of it all. So you got to know what the words are. But more fascinating for me, as I've come to know and love this piece, is the relationship between the text and the music, which is not quite what you think it's going to be. It's really, really fascinating once you understand what Sibelius is doing and how he does it. And we're really going to dig into it with musical examples and a lot of attention to the words. Now, I'm going to read most of them in English because, who am I kidding? My Finnish ain't what it should be, but I'll be able to give you some clues to what's happening in the text and how that relates to the form of the piece. Because believe it or not, like most Sibelius tone poems, Luonnotar is an absolutely strict sonata form, and a particular kind of sonata form, the kind that Mozart uses in his slow movements, that is, sonata form without a development section. In other words, it's A, B, A, B. What could be simpler, right? But in the meantime, while your A, B, and A, B of sonata form is going on, you have this wild text, and I've got to read it to you. And I also want to point out, thank goodness, that Luonnotar has been published in the new critical edition, because the old score was just this sort of reproduction of a handwritten copyist manuscript, and it was so hard to follow. You couldn't see the words. They're little teeny tiny things. It was really, really annoying. So the text begins, O lipa limpi ilman tute cave Luonnotar orear. O stui le matan ai na uksen ole sansa haveroila auteoila. Yeah, haha, scared you, didn't I? I'm not going to sing it. I could with a few octave transpositions, but, I just did painful music, and I think I've probably induced plenty right there, but I just had to do that because it's so much fun. I actually performed this score. It's written for two sets of timpani and two harps. And in my fabulous community orchestra, we were doing the Symphonie Fantastique. So we had the extra timpani and we had the extra harps. And I said to my innocent repertoire committee, let's do Luonnotar. And I had this wonderful friend, her name was Renee, and she had a beautiful, beautiful soprano voice. And she said, I'll do it. I'll sing it. Let me learn Finnish. So she went to the Finnish consulate and she learned how to pronounce the thing. And we did Luonnotar, and she sounded fabulous, and it was great. The fact of the matter is, it should be performed more often. Sibelius wrote this piece for a soprano, a Finnish soprano. Her name was Aino Ahte, and she was famous for doing Salome. She was a Straussian dramatic soprano. And so the piece is notoriously difficult to sing. It's only 8 or 9 minutes, but it's got all kinds of huge range and crazy octave leaps and more octave leaps and, intervals that are very difficult. It's really, really difficult. And that's what makes it so wonderful. And I'm going to read you the text. Now I'm going to read you the text, the whole text, and then we'll see how Sibelius breaks it up to fit the tenets of an absolutely perfectly shaped sonata form without development. It's just, oh God, it gives me chills just to think of the form of this piece. I'm not kidding. It's that great. So here's the text. There was a maiden, a girl of the air, a slender nature spirit, beautiful. She sensed the strangeness of her life, of always being alone in the vast voids. She descended down to the waves. A wave drove the maiden for 700 years. The maiden, mother of the water, turned round and round. She swam to the northwest. To the south, she swam around all the airy horizons. There came a great gust of wind. It raised the sea to a surge. Oh, miserable my days, she's talking now. It would have been better to live as the maiden of the air. Oh, Ukko, highest god, come here when I summon you. Well, here we go. There came a duck, a plain bird. It flew around all the shores of the air. It flew to the northwest, to the south. It did not find places for its nest. No, 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 which in Finnish is I. Shall I make my home on the wind, my dwelling on the waves? The wind will upset it. The wind will upset it. A wave will ruin my dwelling. That's what the bird said. So then the mother of the water raised her knee out of the waves. There the duck made her nest. She began to brood. They don't tell you where Mr. Duck came from. You know, it's kind of, a little lacuna in the narrative. The maiden felt the growing heat. She jerked her limb. The nest tumbled into the water. It broke into pieces. The eggs began to change, to grow beautiful. The egg's upper half became the sky up above. The upper half of the egg white became the gleaming moon. That which was on the mottled part became the stars in heaven. They became the stars in heaven. That's the text. Now, it would represent a challenge, I think, wouldn't it, to set to music. But now we're going to listen to how Sibelius organizes the text. Luonnotar begins with his classic, what they call cross-hatched violin writing, this cross-hatched chugga 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 sort of rhythmic pattern. And that's his first subject. It really doesn't matter what the tune is, which I sang and which of course you remember. No, what matters is the texture. There are two textures against which Sibelius frames the text. So here, I'm going to play, performance I'm going to play is absolutely one of the two of the most recommendable ones. It features Soili Isakowski, who actually sang it twice, recorded it twice, with the Helsinki Philharmonic under Leif Segerstam on Ondine. It's this marvelous recording of Sibelius's orchestral songs, which you absolutely have to own if you're a Sibelius person. And here is a little bit of the first subject of Luonnotar as Sibelius sets it. Okay, so that's the first subject, and what you have to remember is just the texture, that chugga 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 chugga, that business. Anything that happens while that's going on is first subject, and the first subject encapsulates all of the text I just read up to the point where the Maiden of the Air has been swimming around for 700 years, and she talks, and she speaks. So that whole introductory narrative is encapsulated in the first subject. Now, here is the second subject. spooky, isn't it? And spacey and completely different. While the first subject is movement and rhythm, the second subject is this steady, spacey kind of meditation. And that's where she sings the text, "O miserable my days, it would have been better to live as a maiden of the air. O Ukko, highest God, come here when I summon you." That's the whole second subject, just that couple of lines of text. And it's got all kinds of very, very difficult things for the soprano to do. And then the duck comes along. And when the duck comes along, we have the bird, we have the recapitulation. And the thing to remember when these sonata forms without development is that the recapitulation is not exact. It's a return of the A section, but it's modified, it's developed. It's almost a sort of recapitulation combined with sort of a development section. And this A section is going to drive the piece to its big, big climax. The word to listen to for the bird is lintu. Like the conductor, Hannu Lintu. Lintu is bird in Finnish. That I know. And so we're going to hear the bird pop along, and you'll see how actually the modified recapitulation reflects the coming of the bird. In the woodwinds, they're going chugga, 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 chugga. You can hear a little bird come along. So there's one aspect of the text that Sibelius actually captures, but very subtly. It's all very, very stylized, the way he handles this. What he's trying to do is create a very spacey, primal kind of sound, which he does very well, to capture the mood and spirit of the entire poem. And the incidental detail he touches in, but with, like I said, extreme sophistication and stylization. So you don't say, oh, there's the bird. But you can tell. So let's listen to the beginning of the recapitulation with the bird and Soili Isakowski mentioning the lintu, the bird. Here we go. So there you go. You get the bird. And then the climax comes with not the text you'd expect. See, I always thought because, the nest breaks and the egg splinters and shatters and creation happens. It's the Big Bang, right? Wrong. That's not what happens here at all. That's not what happens here at all. The entire huge climax occurs when the duck is talking. When the duck says, "Shall I make my home on the wind, my dwelling on the waves? The wind will upset it. The wind will upset it. A wave will ruin my dwelling." Well, the duck is upset. And the bird, whatever it is upset. And that's the climax of the piece. Here's the way Sibelius sets the climax to that particular text. So there you go. It's not what you'd expect, I think, as the climax of the entire story. Because when the maiden, she jerks her limb, the nest tumbled into the water, and it broke into pieces. That's the Big Bang. But here's the text that the music that Sibelius sets to that text, which is actually the recapitulation of the second subject in the sonata form structure of the piece. That's amazing to me because, I mean, it seems that the music and the words really aren't in sync at all in terms of the music being a literal illustration of the words. And the music is not. The music is an evocation, like I said, of the entire atmosphere of the piece. Now, the rest of the poem is the eggs begin to change. And when that happens, it's the same music that we heard before, only Sibelius just adds some soft, mysterious string chords in the background. And it's marvelous. It suggests this sort of eerie, weird, spooky transformation. But he doesn't have to be literal about it, because how could you be literal about eggs changing into the moon? And I mean, let's face it, right? But the very, very last line, the upper half of the egg, which was the model part, became the stars in heaven. That's the last line. It's where the thing ends, almost abruptly, and Sibelius does it simply with a sustained note on the violins that sounds absolutely like the stars in the heaven. Here is the last few bars of Luonnotar. See what I mean? How simple, how elegant, how perfect just that one sonority is, with the soprano's voice soaring into the heavens, gives you the stars in the sky. It's phenomenally fabulous, but so simple and elegant. That's why this is such an amazing, such a great piece of music. Now, let's talk about some recordings. Luonnotar has been recorded numerous times, and sometimes not too well. I mean, some famous singers have done it. Elisabeth Söderström did it with Vladimir Ashkenazy. She was a little bit past her prime. She sings too much like an opera singer and doesn't, I think, capture the spaciness of the work. I don't like her performance. Järvi did it for Bis more than once. I mean, he did it for the complete edition. And that was also a performance that I thought was a little bit ragged, that one. But Soilia Sikowski did it twice. She did it, the best one, I think, is second time. And for Järvi, a second time with the complete tone poems and a lot of the incidental music on Deutsche Grammophon, this 3-disc set. This has her doing Luonnotar again. It's very good. She's always a very good singer, and she has the right voice for the part. Other noteworthy Luonnotars, the weirdest one, I mean, this is the weirdest one, is Leonard Bernstein with Phyllis Curtin. This one always kind of freaks me out because, Phyllis Curtin was one of the great leader singers of the 20th century, a singer of amazing intelligence and subtlety, and boy, is she wrong in this music. I don't know, there's something about it. Bernstein's conducting is also sort of very interventionist. He's tinkering with the dynamics and makes these little swells and things, and the whole thing just sounds off somehow to me. It's completely not the right Luonnotar, but I mention it because it's there and you may have it. Now, among the sort of really good versions that are worth considering, there was, of course, Berglund with the Bournemouth Symphony, and let's see, who's the soprano here? I have to find out. She's in here. It's yes, Taru Valjaka. Yes, Taru Valjaka, Finnish soprano, like all of the Sibelius that Berglund did in Bournemouth. The music has that wonderful sort of primal quality, a certain edge. She sings it very well. It's a very, very good performance. Also excellent is Solveig Kringleborn. Love that name, Solveig Kringleborn, with the Royal Stockholm Philharmonic under Paavo Järvi. However, I'm not even listing these things down below here because, Luonnotar, it's 8 or 9 minutes long. You're going to see it coupled with other things. You're going to wind up getting it. You're not going to run out and buy a whole disc just for Luonnotar. But unless you get, of course, Isakowski with all the orchestral songs. This is the disc you have to have on Ondine. However, my favorite Luonnotar, my very, very favorite, is this one on Chandos with Phyllis Brynjolfsson and Alexander Gibson. This is a 2-disc set that contains lots of tone poems, most of them. It's a wonderful set. It's really one of the best things Gibson did for Chandos. His Sibelius was always very, very persuasive. But Brynjolfsson, who's a contemporary music specialist with perfect pitch, just nails it with just... I mean, her singing is so accurate and her breath control so amazing at the climax, and the final fade out is unforgettably evocative. This is a Luonnotar that if you're a Luonnotar freak, you absolutely have to have the Brynjolfsson with Gibson on Chandos. And there, I'll put the little thing down below so you know. The two you need to get, Brynjolfsson on Chandos. I'm putting this away because I'm obsessive about these things. And the Soili Isakowski on Ondine. If you have either of these, and you really need to have both, you're going to be in great shape for Luonnotar, irrespective of which other ones you have and where else it may have popped up. So that is the story of Luonnotar, and I hope you find it just as tantalizing and fascinating and evocative as I do. It's a great, completely special piece of music that no one but Sibelius could have written, and you know, it'll help you polish up your Finnish. Just remember, lintu is a bird. There's another wonderful word in there, puska. I have no idea what a puska is, but when the soprano goes puska, you just go, oh, okay, that's the end of the first subject of Luonnotar. Listen for the puska, then you know the transition to the second subject is coming. You begin to hear these words stick out, but really, Sibelius knew what he was doing. He knew how to capture the spirit of this very strange and evocative text, and you will too. So keep on listening, folks. I hope you enjoyed this chat about Luonnotar.